My name is Glen Foster. I'm a stand-up comedian from Canada who goes by the name That Canadian Guy. If you're not from Canada, you very...
Hang on. Wouldn't every guy
from Canada
be that Canadian?
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 Canadian.
Canadian?
Canadian guy?
Yeah, I don't think I ever really thought about it. Damn it. I already paid for the website.
What up, Mike? Toronto. VK on the beat. Check. I'm in Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm from Toronto where you wanna get the city love. I'm in Toronto like we wanna get the city love. My city love me back for my city love. I'm in Toronto.
Welcome to episode 1301 of Toronto Mic'd, proudly brought to you by Great Lakes Brewery, a fiercely independent craft brewery who believes in supporting communities, good times, and brewing amazing beer. Order online for free local home delivery in the GTA. Palma Pasta. Enjoy the taste of fresh, homemade Italian pasta and entrees from Palma Pasta in Mississauga and Oakville. RecycleMyElectronics.ca. Committing to our planet's future means properly recycling our electronics of the past. Getting hip to the hip. An evening for the Downey Wenjack Fund on September 1st. The Moment Lab, brand marketing, strategy, PR, advertising, and production you need. The Moment Lab. And Ridley Funeral Home. Pillars of the community since 1921. Today, making his Toronto Mic debut, celebrating 40 years of comedy. It's That Canadian Guy, Glen Foster. Welcome to Toronto Mic, Glen.
Great to be here, man.
40 years. That's 4 times as long as I've been doing this podcast. 40 years of comedy. That's amazing.
40. No, I call it 40 years of funny. But I've been doing comedy longer than 40 years. Like, COVID messes it up because of the kind of on and off we had for 2 years.
Right.
But I can tell you that I did my first Canadian comedy tour, which started in Winnipeg in 1982. And just this past November of 1982, I did another show in Winnipeg, almost 40 years to the day.
Wow.
Almost. I couldn't get the original venue, but almost 40 years to the day. So that's 40 years right there from 1982. And I know that I was doing comedy in high school.
Okay, on that note, can I interrupt you in the high school? Then I want to hear about the high school.
Yeah.
A woman named Helen, and if I actually go to Twitter, I can find out her last name.
Okay.
Unless she might have changed it. People get married, they change their name. I don't know. But Helen just today tweeted at me when I said to Glen Foster, was finally, this is long overdue, by the way. I'm glad you're here.
I'm glad to.
I went to high school in Oakville with That Canadian Guy. This is Helen's tweet from today.
Okay.
So tell me about in high school. You were funny in high school.
Well, okay. So originally, I think I did my first. Do you remember Junior Achievement? You might even be too. There was a thing called Junior Achievement.
Don't remember it.
It was a thing that
but
was
I would have
kind
won
of
it.
a community outreach kind of program from businesses. And so what they'd do is they'd set up groups of students in these little businesses. And, you would go sell your product door to door. You had to sell shares. It was like running a business, right? So it was a program that they ran, the business community, probably connected to the Chamber of Commerce or something like that. But as part of that, there was a public speaking kind of offshoot. And so I got involved with that. And I realized very quickly, I was very nervous. I realized very quickly that if I could be mildly funny in these speeches, I would be less nervous. Like if I could get a laugh off, then it would be like, okay, now I have time to think about the next thing I'm going to say, and then of course people started expecting it to be funny, which made me more nervous. But around that time, I also, shortly thereafter, I did my first show. I went to 3 different high schools, so. I was in London at the time, at Sir Frederick Banting High School in London.
Okay.
Grade 10, I think, 10 into 11 type thing. And so the day before I did my little 5 minutes, whatever it was, I don't know, and it was a lot of like really bad impressions, and I remember it was partially, impressions of the time, which would be like Howard Cosell, and Jackie Stewart, the race car driver. And the whole skit, as it were, was me doing all these different voices, like a sports announcer type thing of World War III.
Okay.
And that the missiles are flying now, and like that's kind of, and so that was kind of my standard little shtick there for a couple years at a couple different high schools. But in both cases, no one knew me the day before, and everyone knew me the day after. So that was like a kind of my first little brush with fame kind of thing.
What's with the 3 high schools? Is that just you moved around?
Yeah, my father changed jobs. Okay. So, yeah, I grew up in Cambridge. I was born in Montreal. I'm born in Montreal, grew up in Cambridge, lived in London for a little bit, then Oakville after that. So.
Okay, and I did check out the last name of Helen. I feel like I owe her that. Helen O'Hara? Do you remember Helen O'Hara from high school?
I sadly do not.
just pretend. Okay.
It's been a long time.
It's been a long time. I want to find out what takes you from these moments in your high school to that gig in Winnipeg over 40 years ago now. But I'm just going to read a couple more quick notes. One is from Dan. Dan said, looking forward to Glen Foster today. I first saw him live over 30 years ago at Yuk Yuks.
Holy smokes.
So that's going way back. But again, 40 years of funny. It's a long time. Okay. Most people don't get 4 minutes of funny.
Well, I'm starting to, this is happening, and I hope it's a trend. I don't know, but I hope it's a trend. I don't work a whole lot, so I can't tell if it's a trend, but there have been a number of people coming up to me after shows, especially since pandemic and since everybody's getting out more kind of thing. Mostly guys, I'd say, some women, but mostly guys in their like late 30s, early 40s, and they're like, "Oh man, I've been watching you since I was a kid." Right now, everyone's a kid to me now, but it's kind of interesting, right? Because then I think about, okay, well, how old would you have been when you were watching this? And most times the answer is you were too young.
The math doesn't work.
To watch this. You had very permissive parents, I guess. Right. But there was a time in the early, the Comedy Network was coming online probably in the late 90s into 2000 type thing. Okay. So there was a time when the Comedy Network was first starting when they didn't have a lot to put on it, right, as far as original content. And I had already done at that point, just for laughs, I had done it by that point probably 3 or 4 times. So... and then I recorded a Comedy Now special in the year 2000. So from about the year 2000 to the year 2010, I was on TV in reruns on the Comedy Network, like sometimes 3 times a week. Right. So I need to find these people. So people, if you remember me from 2000 to 2010 on the Comedy Network or at Yuk Yuks clubs or anywhere I might be doing comedy, get a hold of me. Go to thatcanadianguy.com, and if I can find enough people, I might try to put a tour together. And if I can find more than enough people, I might drag a few friends along. So there you go. FOTS, raise your arm. I will say, Glenn, if you're looking for like the GTA Gen X crowd, many of them are listening right now. So we're reaching them right now. I want to just shout out one such gentleman whose real name is Manfred, but listeners of this program will know him better as the guy from Elephants and Stars. So he's an FOTM. You, Glen Foster, are now an FOTM. That means friend of Toronto Mike. So welcome to the this exclusive club. Fantastic. Hold that enthusiasm, because what did Elephants and Stars write in? He says, Glen is an ex-Bullseye Records alum. Oh, yes. I think we actually shared a bill with him once. And then so Manfred's asking for a Jamie Vernon story or two. Okay. And I'm just going to piggyback on this because we just lost
Bob Segarini.
Bob Segarini,
also an FOTM.
Yes.
And he was 77, passed away last month. By the way, for those listening, there's a great Ridley Funeral Home Memorial episode of Toronto Mike that dropped on the first day of August. That's only a few days ago. And there is a wonderful tribute to Bob Segarini in there featuring Cam Carpenter, who knew him quite well and is a kind of a records guy. You might know Cam, Glen. But Glen, please tell me about what exactly is Bullseye Records, and if you can tell a Jamie Vernon story or two for Manfred.
I don't know if I have a Jamie Vernon story, but Bullseye Records is was an all Canadian record company. He has all the old catalogs for Gatto and Klaatu and any obscure Canadian band you can think of. He's got the old catalog for them. But the reason he factors in with me is he saw me somewhere, and I think it was at Jeff Healy's club, because I used to run an open mic at Jeff Healy's club in the early 2000s, around 2003, 2005, somewhere in there. And he decided that he wanted to put out a DVD, my first DVD, which was called Shot at the Empire.
Okay.
And that was financed, underwritten, whatever, by Jamie Vernon and Bullseye Records.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Okay. And do you have any stories for me regarding Bob Segarini, who is, quite the character in this market?
I was with Bob a fair bit again during that time, probably in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, because he was running a jam session at the Hard Rock Cafe on Yonge Street. And every once in a while, he would have some comedians on as well. And then it sort of became like the thing I was doing at Jeff Healy's club was a comedy night followed by music. So we'd have some, comedians have an open mic type thing, and then musicians would come in and jam after that, right? And sometimes the musicians were great and would hang out and watch the show, but most times they were assholes, and they would just sit in another room until the comedy was over, and then they would come in, right? Now, you kind of can't blame them because, amateur comedy is not the best thing in the world. And if you're coming week after week, you're going to see a lot of the same shit, right? That's just the way it is. But
can you name check any of these musicians? Like, do you want to shout any of them out? I mean, this
I don't think so. But I was actually friends with a band, which was called The Free Press. And I met them through Healy's and almost manage them, but I didn't have the skill. It's not my skill set. I can barely, in fact, can't even manage myself. I always calls myself the weakest link in my own organization. But I did try to set them up with some managers that I knew, and nothing really ever came of it. But
do you have any Jeff Healy stories here since you dropped his name and was a big fan?
I only really ran into him once at the club because we were in on a Monday night, right? It wouldn't be very often that Jeff would come in on a Monday. But I remember seeing Jeff when I was touring way out in Victoria. I think I saw Jeff for the first time and was, of course, blown away. So, but as far as meeting him again in Toronto at his club, maybe in passing, but nothing of significance.
Okay, so I want to get you to that Winnipeg gig in '82. We have you kind of discovering this secret talent. I don't know if it's a secret, but you're discovering. Okay. Yeah, so you discover that you are good at this. I guess that happens in high school.
Sometime after I did that high school show in Oakville, because I did my second actual comedy show in Oakville at a high school variety thing. Sometime after that, very soon after I'd moved to Oakville, I was 17 at the time. I remember because Q107 was just going on the air.
77.
77, yep. Exactly. And what was I going to say here? So Yuk Yuks was recently opened. Like they had moved out of the church basement, and they were already at the Bay Street location, the Bay in Yorkville location.
Sure.
So I went down there one night with a friend of mine on a Monday because that's when they didn't even have amateur night. What they had in those days was amateur hour, which was after the regular show. So people would watch like 2 hours of comedy, and if it was Mike Macdonald or whatever, he'd absolutely blow the doors off the place. And the first time I saw Mike Macdonald
I was going to ask you about Mike Macdonald. I love it when comics come on this program and talk about Mike Macdonald because there's such a respect and reverence for his artistry.
The first time I saw Mike Macdonald was about 3 weeks after I started comedy, because I was told, well, you got to see, because I was doing a bunch of jokes that weren't exact. I had no segues at all. And someone said to me, well, you should see Mike Macdonald because everything flows so smoothly and so on and so forth. So I went to see Mike Macdonald within about 3 weeks of starting comedy. And oh my God, I'd never laughed so hard. There's been a few people in my life that have put me in absolute pain watching comedy.
Right.
Bill Cosby was one. I know that
that doesn't age as well, but
doesn't age as well. But if you separate the horror from the person,
right. The same way you can enjoy Billie Jean when it comes on the radio, right?
There you go. It doesn't take anything away from his talent,
right,
at all. He was amazing.
Much like O.J. Simpson was a great running back.
There you go.
You can't take that away.
You cannot.
No.
I
like this game. Keep going. No.
Yeah. Anyway, so the first time I saw Mike, I was like, what the hell am I doing in this business?
You wanted to quit.
He was so good, like just so good. I mean, and he did like 2 hours, it's legendary the amount of time that Mike used to do. Right.
Yeah.
And then, Mike and I were never really good friends, but we were acquaintances. And I remember there was a time when Mike was being signed by this big agency out of New York, and we had a kind of a going away thing for him. So we had a kind of a little roast type thing. And my opening line was, I've known Mike for 10 years. He's known me for 2. Hey, this guy can write. Yeah. And have him over for video games. Because that was Mike's game. He'd have comics over, play video games, and anything that anybody said, he would turn into a bit, So
now, okay, so I'm going to name check a couple of people I've had these Mike Macdonald chats with. One is Ralph Benmergui.
Okay, yeah. I worked on his show.
I was going to ask you about Ralph because I feel like in that late 70s, early Yuk Yuks times, I'm trying to remember.
He was an MC, I believe.
He was an MC. Like, I know he was, So tell me anything and everything about Ralph Benmergui. He's gonna hear this. I'll just warn you about that right now. Not that you'd say anything bad about Ralph.
I can't tell you a whole lot, really. I mean, I did work on his show.
So what did you do on his? This is the Friday night show.
Yeah, I was a writer.
Because Breslin was involved in that show.
Yes, he was.
As well.
He was the producer.
And James B. Right
James B. was the band.
What a crew! What a time to be alive.
Yes.
Okay. And what were you doing?
Writing.
Being funny.
Just trying to write stuff. Just trying to write funny stuff. We had a little news segment bit that they did, so I was trying to write stuff for that and write the occasional sketch type thing, but they had no budget, no money, nothing. So it was very hard to write sketch because it's like, well, can we have a sketch where 2 people are doing nothing in a place where no one is?
This is it. I find
and
this
I made a joke about it because it was Friday night.
Yeah.
It was a Friday night show.
Right.
And it was supposed to be, nationwide type thing. And I thought,
for sure.
Yeah. The only people watching this, I said, the only people watching this in far-flung places in Canada are the people who are breaking into your house at the time that it happens to be on. Right?
So why is that? I got lots of questions. I got questions
because it was too much of a Toronto show. It was too much with a bit artsy-fartsy, really, in a way, because they had the band with James B., which is not exactly, wouldn't exactly, appeal to the middle of the country type thing. So it was very much Toronto-centric, very much, I don't even know what the word new age something at the time you would call it.
Was it a little? I'm trying to remember now. In real time, I kind of experienced it, but I don't remember digging it. Sorry, Ralph, but was it a little pretentious?
That might be. Yeah, and I don't know if pretentious is just fish out of water for good for a Toronto scene or maybe Vancouver or whatever. But I just knew from having toured some of these places in the middle of nowhere that this wasn't going to fly in the middle of nowhere.
And it didn't fly.
And that was the criticism.
Spoiler alert.
Right? That was the criticism. So, that lasted
It's interesting because I produced, I still do, although it's been a little while, Ralph, since you've dropped a new episode, but he's got a podcast called Not That Kind of Rabbi, and I produce it. And I work very closely with Ralph on that. It's really good, actually, because Ralph's good at what he does. But this
is Ralph a rabbi now?
See, it's called Not That Kind of Rabbi because
okay.
rabbi apparently means teacher, but there's of course. So not that kind of rabbi.
Not
so
a
Ralph's a rabbi, but he's not that kind of rabbi.
I see. Okay.
All right. I'm teaching you a lot here. Okay.
Yeah.
So I feel like Ralph carries this. Like this is sort of a joke because I once heard, I think it was on Q actually, where Jim Carrey was being, I'm going to ask you about him in a minute, but Jim Carrey was being interviewed, and Jim realized he was being interviewed by CBC, and he kind of closed it with this joke about, back off Benmergui, leave Benmergui alone, because I feel like this is like a go-to, an easy catch, a joke to kind of make fun of Ralph Benmergui in this Friday night show. But I mean, you tried. You just had no budget, and it was too, as you said, too Toronto.
I think also he had an aversion to doing jokes. He wanted to do sketch. He wanted to do crowd work, whatever, but put actual jokes in front of him. I think he had an aversion to it.
Interesting. Who else was on that writing staff? Was it all on your shoulders?
Larry Horowitz was there.
We lost, yeah.
There's a couple other guys. One guy went on to, or may have come from, Saturday Night Live. I can't remember his name. Neil something, I think. And of course, Mark Breslin.
Yeah, Mark Breslin.
Also
FOTM Mark Breslin.
Okay. And and the other thing that they started doing was they kind of replaced Ralph at the beginning of the show, and they didn't have him he'd host the show, but then he would not do the opening monologue. It was a news monologue, and he did not do it.
Interesting.
They would bring in a different guest every week to do the news monologue, so then we wrote with that person as well, whoever it happened to be, right? And ended up generally being a few Yuk Yuks comics type thing, delivering those, newsy type segments. I did a couple myself, actually.
Interesting. Okay, so now to take us back to late 70s there, Yuk Yuks. I'm trying to build a scene here.
Oh, so to continue then.
Well, yeah, I'm going to...
so then I did my first 5-minute late night thing. And the thing was too, it wasn't like now. You couldn't just turn on Yuk Yuks turn on Netflix and watch like 150 hours of specials. Right. Didn't exist.
No, you're right.
If you wanted to see live comedy, you had to go out and see live comedy. So therefore, people did stay after the show. I mean, not a lot of people, I mean, it's 11 o'clock on a Monday night. I mean, who really can do that, right? But in those days, people would stay for a little while. Oh, what the heck? We'll just watch a couple amateurs, whatever, right? So the first one I did was kind of very much like what I'd been doing at my high school variety shows. And it's like, okay, fine. I don't even really remember it, really. And the second one, I went up a week later, and it's like, yeah, okay, kind of the same thing. So then I thought, well, I've been doing this material for a while now. I think what I need to do is change things up. So I wrote an entirely new 5 minutes for the third shot, and it was dead silence. Dead silence for 5 minutes. And then Mark Breslin, who was the guy running everything at the time, played a car crash. They had a small little TV in the corner, and they played a car crash. They had this little video they would use. It was a car crash.
Like a gong or something.
It was like an old Buster Keaton. It was, right? So the train going off the rails and a car crash, and it was all old black and white. And then Mark goes, "Oh, it's a disaster, ladies and gentlemen. Glen Foster is a disaster." So I didn't go back for 3 years.
Oh my God. Okay.
So they owe me 3 years.
Okay. So that you were so kind of affected by this lack of applause.
This is like
laughter.
78, 79. No, it wasn't the lack of applause or that. It was that bullshit playing that video. Yeah. Right?
And you're so young, right?
I was very young. I was like 17 or 18 at the time.
What a move. Okay. So what for 3 years, what are you doing?
I went to college. I went to Sheridan for advertising for 2 years. I did a show there, as a matter of fact, because they had a variety. Anytime there was an opportunity, like a variety show or something, that I would try to.
You're going to jump on.
Try to do, but I didn't even know about. I mean, I don't know if open mics even existed at that time. Right. It must have, but I don't know, right? And I was new to everything.
Sure.
And so then 3 years later, I guess I was doing a job that I particularly hated. I thought I was going to get a job with they were a printing company that was trying to be an advertising agency, but then they remembered they were a printing company, and so they had hired me to be like a junior creative guy. But then they did. like grocery flyers and all kinds of like zero creative involved. Like, what's the creative? It's 89 cents a pound this week. Well, wow, that's really going to grab people.
Right.
And part of it, anyway, I hated it and decided to go back to Yuk Yuks again, by which time they were having amateur night on Monday. So a full night of, and in those days, it was like the very beginning of stand-up comedy. There were not a lot of comics. There were only about 10 of us.
Can you name check any? I'm dying.
Simon Rakoff would have been
later
there.
I'm going to ask you about
Lawrence
Simon.
Morgenstern would be there. Larry Horowitz was there. Ron Vaudry.
Can I ask you about a name?
Yeah.
Was John Wing Jr. there?
I believe that John Wing and I started on, he thinks, and he has a photographic memory, so I tend to believe him. I think we started on the same night. Wow. Or very close on that second run for me, like the 3 year.
Right after your hiatus.
Or very close. Yeah, he was there, definitely. I'm trying to think of some other names.
By any chance, and I'm trying to remember his involvement with Yuk Yuks, I know, was Larry Fedoruk on any of those mics?
Yes, Larry Fedoruk was there.
I also produced his podcast. Shout out to Larry Fedoruk.
Okay.
Sorry, I got to name check Larry. Okay,
well,
go on there. Love the Larrys.
So Paul K. Willis, right? Who I still remember one of the things he would always do. He'd go, "I'm laughing, won't you join me?" I just thought that was hysterical.
Just to let you know, so John Wing came on and he's promised to come back, and because he says, you mentioned his memory. It's wild, his memory. He remembers
just unbelievable.
He remembers every syllable of Ralph Benmergui's old set from like the late 70s or whatever. And John Wing Jr. is going to come on this program. Of course, he's been threatening to do this for a while.
Do the old set?
And do Benmergui's old set.
Oh, man.
Is that wild or what?
That is wild. That is. Steve Schuster was a guy who was around already.
Wow. I love the details.
But my point being, there's only about 10 of us.
Right.
And we're working all the time. Right. I mean, I was up several times a week. I mean, that is unheard of now.
Right.
You cannot get stage time. There's so many comics looking for stage time, and they're all starting their own open mics just to get stage time. Right?
Like if you were a younger man starting now, would you even pursue this career? Like, would you still?
I don't know. I really don't, because it's a grind. It's a real grind, and I'm kind of back in the grind, I mean, it means nothing. 40 years? Who gives a fuck? You're still, begging for 6 minutes here and 10 minutes there.
Is that a Canadian thing?
No, it's not a Canadian thing. Because
you're that Canadian guy, which I'm going to find out that origin
because I've throughout the pandemic, particularly, was a good reveal of this. There was a Facebook group started called Displaced Comedians, right?
Right.
And this is mostly an American group, but worldwide, Canada as well, right? But there are like over 3,000 members of that group, right? And the vast majority of them are amateurs who are, trying to do these open mics every night. They call it grinding, right? It's called grinding, going from mic to mic. And, it's something you can do at a higher level in New York City, but it exists in Toronto. And then we have open mics. I live in Ottawa now for the past 4 years.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah. I used to live
That's a long drive for you to come on today.
Well, I'm here to do this thing tonight, right? I'm here to do.
What are you doing tonight?
It's the kickoff of the very first Danforth Comedy Festival.
Okay.
So I'm doing a show called The Best Damn Stand-Up Show. I'm only doing about 15 minutes, but there's 5 people on the show. So it's still going to be probably a 90-minute show or something like that, but I'm only doing 15 minutes. So.
Okay, and this drops, the way this works is this will be in the Toronto Mike podcast feed about, 8 minutes after we say goodbye. So we're going to after this chat, we'll take a photo and you'll drive away, and this thing will be in the feed 5 minutes later. So
there you go.
If an eager beaver has jumped on episode 1301, there's still time to see you tonight.
It's at the Black Swan. It's upstairs from the Black Swan. It's called the Social Capital Theater.
Of course.
And it's upstairs from the Black Swan, which is right at the intersection of Danforth and
Broadview. What is
Broadview?
Yeah.
Thank you. Yes.
I mean, I'm not East York Mike, but I know that neck of the woods.
I haven't been out there for a while, so yeah. So that's why I'm doing it, because the guy who's running it, Luke Lindale, is a friend of mine. So it's sort of a favor, but also it's a new festival, right? So it's, something to...
And that's what you do. You perform, and you're funny.
And then I also get to visit my mom and my brother and my... I try to work gigs around trips to Toronto, or the way around. I try to work my trips to Toronto around gigs. Just to cover the gas money, Well,
it makes sense. It makes all the sense in the world to me. Okay, so again, as we tell your story, I do have a lot of audio I want to play.
Oh, sure.
Actually, it's going to be out of order, and you're going to tell me what I'm listening to.
Do whatever you want to do here.
Well, here's what I want to do right now. I want to give you something for making the trek here and making your Toronto Mike debut.
Ooh.
I do have in my freezer a large frozen lasagna from Palma Pasta. I don't know where you're staying, at family, or where you're staying.
I have no freezer.
No freezer. Okay, so I'm eating. Everybody, ladies and gentlemen, I and my family of 6, we're going to devour.
How could I possibly know? I can't do this because, and I love Palma Pasta, especially their lasagna is fantastic.
But no freezer. Okay, my friend. Listen,
there's no way to do that. The hotel has a freezer, but
no, you don't have one in the room. Of course, I should have thought of this.
Okay. There is one actually in the room where I'm staying with my friend.
So if I gave, here's my question: if I gave you lasagna, because of course it's yours,
I can't because I'm going straight into Toronto to do the show. I'm going to my friend's place. I could put it in her freezer, but.
Well, can I give you some Great Lakes beer to take with you? Even maybe
you can do.
Okay, I'm just trying to give you some goods here. Okay, so we'll work out the lasagna thing later.
I'm very upset about the Palma Pasta because if I was going back to the hotel, I would absolutely.
I'm upset. I can promise you, I'll give it a good home.
But let's see how long this goes and how much time I have left, because I do have to get into Toronto to meet my friend.
Okay.
But that's not till later, so maybe I've got time to go. It doesn't make sense, really, though, to go backwards.
But you could give it to your friend.
I could give it to my friend. That's what I could, in fact.
Because
I
know that the good people at Palma Pasta would love somebody in your circle to enjoy that.
I do enjoy Palma Pasta, though. It's really good.
I need to make an announcement. So, Glenn, this is a rare mistake on my part, but I've made a few mistakes. I booked a guest recently. And it turned out I got somebody else who with the same name. Like I literally...
Oh, okay.
Like this happened. So you are that Canadian guy, right? I have the right Glenn Foster here.
You have the correct Glenn Foster because there are other Glenn Fosters. There are lots of other Glenn Fosters.
Are any Canadian comics?
There are no Canadian comedians that are named Glenn Foster other than myself, but there is the Littlest Groom. That was Glenn Foster. An actor, Glenn Foster.
Okay.
In that show, The Littlest Groom.
I don't remember this show.
It was quite a while back. It was a reality show.
Okay.
And then there is a Glenn Foster who is in Nanaimo, BC, who is a musician, who I wrote a song with.
Okay, you know what? I have this song. Okay. Is this Party Out There Tonight?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I'll get back to my Chris Tate story.
All right.
Which will bring us to the correction I need to make regarding TMLX 13. Stand by.
There's a party out there somewhere tonight. In a wide open space where the stars shine bright. You can come as you are, yeah, you look alright. There's a party out there tonight. You either use it or lose it, and I'll show you how.
So this is Glenn Foster squared?
Glenn Foster and Glenn Foster. So one day I got an email, I got a Facebook message, right, from Glenn Foster. So I thought, the hell, this is like a scam, someone taking over my account, this is weird. Turns out, nope, this is a legit guy named Glenn Foster, and he's a musician in Nanaimo. His claim to fame, I guess, is that he taught David Gogo to play guitar. If you know David Gogo at all.
I know this name. Lives in a mountain. I want to say Gogo Mountain.
He does, actually.
Right, yeah. This is so named after his dad. I mean, I've
Something
heard the Gogo.
Like that. Yeah. So anyway, we got chatting back and forth, and he said, if you ever come out to Nanaimo, maybe we could do a show together. So we did a show in Nanaimo called the Glenn Foster's Experience.
That's funny.
Nobody got the joke. And anyway, so here's my story.
Yeah.
I can't sing and I can't play any instruments, but every once in a while things pop into my head, like chunks of songs, riffs, what you'd call hooks, lyrics. And so I had one of these things kicking around my head for a while, and I sent it to him, and he didn't. It doesn't really follow what I did, but he took what I did and turned it into this, right?
Okay.
So,
it's a nice little ditty. So,
it is a nice little,
So it's interesting. So you collaborated with another Glen Foster. To put a bow on my little story is that I thought I had, Toronto-based musician Chris Tate from Chalk Circle coming over.
Okay.
And I ended up with Toronto-based musician Chris Tate from a completely different band. I'm looking now because I want to shout out the band. But the Lazarettes. Okay, so it was just, I couldn't believe it. I had the wrong Chris Tate, but I didn't find out till I was already recording with Chris Tate. But you're the right Glen Foster, and this is a long-winded way of saying, yes, I did screw up with the Chris Tates, but I've also screwed up with the date for TMLX 13, so this is very important. I've been telling everyone on this program that TMLX 13, that's the 13th Toronto Mike Listener Experience, I've been saying it's taking place on August 31st. That is not true. I screwed up. It's actually taking place on Thursday, September 7, 2023, from 6 to 9 p.m., at Great Lakes Brewery in Southern Etobicoke, down the street from the Costco. So, September 7th, 6 to 9 p.m., be at GLB for TMLX 13. I apologize for all the confusion and messing up my dates.
All right.
Now we're set. Now we're clear. Couple more quick things become mentioning events. There is an important event taking place on September 1st, and I urge everybody to go and buy tickets to Getting Hip to the Hip. That's what this poster over there is for, Getting Hip to the Hip. And this is a evening for the Downey Wenjack Fund, and it's 7:30 p.m. on September 1st. Go to gettinghiptothehip.com and use the promo code FOTM10, FOTM10, and you can save 10%. I'll see you there. Again, that's September 1st at 7:30. Can I play another song, Glenn, as we kind of...
Sure. I've only got one other song, I think.
Well, let's see. Let's find out. Let's find out what I got here. You'll tell me.
I want to do something different with the CD.
Yes,
and,
this.
So I had like a little tune that was sort of in my head, and I thought I would have to sing this for it to be viable, and my voice is not, so that puts us down to like rap, country, or like a Limp Bizkit-y type thing. And as it turns out, actually, the guy who helped me record the CD was a noof. So as it turns out, this is a drinking song. I don't know how that happened, but there you have it. And it's a little song about Canada. And there's a point in here that you can actually sing along. You'll catch on pretty quick, I think, because we're all clever Canadians. But I'm going to bring the band up here now, if you don't mind. How's the band doing? Are we ready with the band there? Okay, there's the band. Huh? Okay, we're on a budget. Just everybody pretend. Anyway, we're going to crank this sucker up. It's called What Are You Gonna Do? Here we go.
What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? It's tough to live in Canada, my friend, you know it's true. We don't wanna fight, we're much too polite, we'd rather have a brew. It's tough to live in Canada, but what are you gonna do? There is a land of ice and snow with noisy neighbours down below. The country we call Canada, the true north, strong and free. Above the 49th parallel, usually pink on the map. You can make the mistake that we're part of the States, it's alright, we're used to that. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? It's tough to live in Canada, my friend, you know it's true.
You can sing, Glenn. Like, you can sing.
Now,
I don't know. I think it's better than I could do.
I'm being covered up there. What it really should be is auto-tuned.
Oh.
So that's the guy singing with me there. He's the guy who co-wrote the song with me. Also from Nanaimo, just by coincidence.
Wow.
Or was it Victoria? It was Victoria, but out on the island. So
Close
there's
enough. To me, it's all the same.
Two tunes from the island, but that's an example of one of the little things that popped in my head and would not leave. The what are you gonna do part, right? And then I just sort of built around it. He wrote a tune, and then I put more lyrics to it, and
I'm digging it.
Yeah.
Quick question came in on the live stream from Hey Ref, and he wants to know, was Howie Mandel at Yuk Yuks at that time that you were there?
Never met him at Yuk Yuks.
Okay, so that's the answer.
He was gone. Jim Carrey was gone also at that time.
Well, I was going to ask you if you did see, because I'm trying to remember the story, but Mark Breslin comes on and says he thought Jim Carrey was terrible. Not terrible, but not very good.
I have heard that, but I never met him. I met him many years later, but only for like a few minutes. It was a weird
Did
thing
he know
that
you
happened
were?
to be.
Because I feel like he kind of knows the
Kind of
scene.
knew who I was. Obviously, I knew who he was, and it was a bar downtown Toronto, and I forget why he was there or even why I was there, but someone I knew that he was in a back room there and basically brought me in to meet Jim Carrey. And I think it was only there maybe 10, 15 minutes at the most because he had a kind of little private thing going on back then. I didn't want to, crash
it depends
type
what
thing.
phase of his career you're bumping into him.
Yeah, I don't even... If
Post Ace Ventura?
It would be in the early 2000s, I think.
Yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
That Jim Carrey. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, one more name for me. Again, I'm sorry for annoying you with these names, but I'm
That's
like,
all
I
right.
have that
No,
Canadian guy on. I got to ask
that's
about. We talked about Mike Macdonald, and you sang his praises. What about Norm Macdonald?
Well, I can't sing his praises.
Elaborate,
I
please.
will sing his praises. Okay, if we're
It's the home of real talk, so in Norm's not
we're
listening,
splitting again between person and deeds and person, right?
Okay, intriguing. Yes.
So basically, he owes me $5,000 from a poker game in the 80s. Never paid it. Pissed off to Saturday Night Live. Never paid it.
And that's real money, especially back then.
Very real money back then.
That's a lot today,
And
actually.
it was ridiculous. We should not have been involved in such a game in the first place. It was just absolutely stupid, but it was the 80s and everybody was into excess.
Was there cocaine at this table?
There was not. There was not. I've never done cocaine. I've seen it in massive piles around me, but I've never done it because I can't even resist.
You don't want your heart to explode.
No, I can't. I thought about this a long time ago. I can't even resist a cheeseburger. So I would hate to have something that has a real grip on me.
Smart. Smart.
I have an addictive personality.
No, you got to know your limits and live within it.
And weirdly, I never used to have an addictive personality, but I tried having addictive personality, and right away, I had an addictive personality. Okay, I'm doing a circular joke here. Never mind.
Too clever for this
Too
audience.
clever for too clever for the
I'm
room.
brain damaged. Okay, so interesting. But you said you have to separate, much like we're doing with, I would say with R. Kelly. If I hear Ignition Remix, I always think what a great song that is. But then I realize what an absolutely piece of trash human being that is singing that song. So not that Norm is R. Kelly, but Norm Macdonald owed you real dollars and squelched on that
He
bet.
owed me real dollars. He treated a couple people that I know very well, very badly because he could.
Right.
And everyone's, oh, that's just Norm, Norm, he's just Norm. Well, Norm just being Norm. Anyway, the whole let's not talk about the dead kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm not trying to, raise any stink here, except that, so as a comedian, did you have respect for his craft?
Oh, totally.
Right.
Absolutely. I saw one of Norm's first sets. I think I saw him in Ottawa because he started in Ottawa. And I was blown away like everybody else was, right? Not only was he an amazing comic, but just a completely different point of view. But more importantly to Norm in the later times was that the camera loved Norm. Norm looked like Paul Newman.
Right.
He looked like a young Paul Newman on camera, right?
Piercing blue eyes,
Absolutely.
good-looking tall guy.
Yeah.
And I was going to ask you to compare and contrast because I hear from comics like yourself and John Wayne Jr. and Ralph Benmergui and all these cats come over, talk about Mike Macdonald and how he's the best comic they ever saw and he blew everybody away. Meanwhile, Mike Macdonald didn't really translate to the screen.
No.
And I'm wondering, if Mike Macdonald had a physical presence of a Norm Macdonald, would that have been different? Why did it never happen for Mike?
Because Mike wasn't as pretty. He wasn't as pretty. He was a kind of a harsh
Brent
looking.
Butt's not pretty. No offense, Brent, who's also an FOTM. He's a handsome guy.
But Brent is not Mike was angry and he looked angry. Right.
And sweaty.
And scared. It scared the camera is the opposite of what happened with Norm. Mike just couldn't be put on. His act just was so big that it didn't work in a small, not venue, but,
forum like that.
The confines of
box.
television, the box, it just, no. Mike was big. Mike would do the joke. Sorry, Mike would tell the joke, and he would tell the joke in such a way that it was, completely dissected. Like if he was talking about banks, he had 8 things to say about banks and everything you could possibly ever think a joke about a bank, from the lineup to the ATM to the teller. He had dissected the whole process of the bank, and then after telling the joke, he would do the joke, physicalize the joke, right? And that was Mike's great genius, but also what just did not translate.
And it is interesting, again, comparing and contrasting, Norm Macdonald and Mike Macdonald, both gone far too soon.
Here's so in the last couple, Norm gave a very moving speech when Letterman left the air. And he went on Letterman, a very moving speech. And I thought, okay, well, maybe Norm's changed. So I contacted Norm through Twitter because Norm followed me on Twitter for some reason. And Norm did everything through Twitter. And I don't know why.
Play-by-play of golf.
Yeah. But all his communication was handled through Twitter. So for some reason, Norm followed me, or I followed him. And then he, for some reason, followed me back. So a few years ago, I guess pre-pandemic, I contacted Norm through Twitter. I said, "Hey, Norm, I know I thought your speech for Letterman there was really gracious and maybe you've changed your spots or whatever kind of thing." And for a while, it seemed like maybe we were having a normal conversation and blah blah blah. And then he just was being a dick. He was, he was like trying to sell me crypto. He had a bunch of Bitcoin that he was trying to unload. He kept saying, "I'm going to have you open for me. You can come down to the States and open for me." And he would dangle that carrot, and it never ever happened. And then he'd say, "Oh well, I can't pay anything, but you're certainly free to sell merchandise." Yeah, that's what people want, Norm. Right. They go to see Norm Macdonald and they want to buy merchandise from the opener. So he was fucking with me. He was fucking with me, and
that's disappointing.
I can show it to you if you want. I mean, I've got it.
I know. I trust
the
you.
The whole Twitter. But people, I don't want to get into it because, he's a beloved character and everything else, but leave it at that.
You're this is the home of real talk here, Glenn. So I appreciate your candor, because you could just blow smoke up my ass like everybody else and tell me.
There's lots of things I could say, but I'm not going to because I did it. What's the point?
I respect that. All right, so we've got you after the 3-year hiatus. We're talking about the 10 comics, working your ass off. Is that when when do you start the clock on the 40 years that we've been talking about?
So I would say the clock started when I did my first Yuk Yuks Western tour, and that was in 1982. Or was it? Yeah, 82. Now, mind you, prior to that, in 1981, I had gone to Los Angeles to tape my first evening at the Improv.
That's the brick wall.
That's
on A&E. Is that A&E?
And Tony Curtis was the host.
Wow.
And I didn't realize it at the time, but looking back now, I went way over my time, And Tony Curtis was actually standing on stage with his hand on my shoulder by the end of the set. And still, I'm fucking oblivious. So maybe that's where it all went wrong. Maybe Bud Friedman went.
Why can't you? I'm just helping you out. I think you're closer to 45 than 40 in the clock here.
Yes, but I say COVID complicates it. 3 years off.
And it's
right. But let's say, okay, so 1982 was the first. November of 1982 was the first Yuk Yuks tour that I went on, and that was kind of a recon mission for Yuk Yuks because they didn't have any clubs west of Ontario. And that was like Winnipeg, Calgary, Edmonton, Saskatoon. So we did all these places. And shortly after that, in the years following that, they started opening up clubs in Calgary and Winnipeg and Edmonton, all these kind of things, right? So I like to say I didn't just work the road. I'm one of the guys that built it.
You built the road.
We built the road.
Ron James came over and was talking about how he went to LA to try to make it, and he kind of he came back home like a little wounded, and then he realized he needed to just toe his own road or whatever, however you say that, in this country. And
that's pretty much it.
It's interesting to hear you guys are kind of similar-minded cats in terms.
I have a funny Ron.
Well, yeah, I love it. And can you say it like Ron James? Because I never know what he's saying half the time.
Well, half the time he's talking so fast, you never know. The thing I like about Ron James is it comes out, and he tells 15 jokes, and there's a time take me to take 2 jokes. I tell 2 jokes, and he's telling 15 jokes in there, and then it's up there and down. And I tell Bob, we go down to the store there, and then right? And it's like it's like that Star Trek episode where everyone's sped up around them and you can hear just a right? But so Ron James, who actually likes my comedy and did for quite some time, tried to get me in with his agent. Anyway, I won't tell you the name, but so he tried to get me in with his agent. And so on a recommendation from Ron James, I send Ron James' agent my video, right? And I hear nothing. And so a few weeks later, I call the guy up and I go, listen, I sent, Ron James told me to send this, and I sent it. And he goes, yeah. He says, I was watching your video, and I didn't really find it all that funny, really. And then he says, and then had some friends over a couple weeks ago, and for some reason your name came up, and then I put on your video, and then they were laughing, and then I was laughing because they were laughing. But I think what it really comes down to is I'm the kind of Canadian you're making fun of. Okay, thank you.
I'm the kind of Canadian making
right?
Oh, well, Ron tried, and
he did. He tried. I'll say he tried. So,
I want to shout out your most recent album, which is called Unchecked.
Yes,
still very fresh. And if you're cool with it, can I just play a little bit?
Play away.
Just a little bit of.
It's my favorite album so far.
Okay, here's a bit of it.
So here we are, 2020, which is approximately, I can't be exactly sure, but roughly 40 years since I first stepped onto a comedy stage. So, thank you. So by applause, how many people have actually heard of me before? Okay. So for the rest of you, I'm old and new. Not that old, not too old to have some fun. Oh, the other night we partied with these Swedish stewardesses and, well, Swiss chalet waitresses. Still. I hope I dressed her. See, it doesn't even matter what I wear these days. I just come off looking like a retired cop. I would not be a good cop. No mind for detail, no memory. If we were out on patrol and there was an incident and I had to write a report about it, I'd just make the whole thing up. I would cheat off my partner right off the bat. Hey, what did you get for number of shots fired?
Very good. How would somebody get their hands on Unchecked?
Well, that's interesting because my record company and a few other record companies are in dispute with Spotify. So Unchecked has been removed from Spotify. For a while it was gray and it was there, but you couldn't listen to it. But now it's been removed. So I think you can listen to it through Apple iTunes still. Probably can buy it through iTunes.
Well, what's your website address again?
It's thatcanadianguy.com.
So you probably have links there.
There are links, but again, I...
Maybe not streaming on Spotify. You and Neil Young in solidarity. Maybe.
Yes. You're
in good company there. Very okay.
I actually, one of these little things that, again, these musical things that pop into my head that I've done no work on whatsoever, but did try to get some other musicians involved who didn't want to because it's anti-Spotify, right? But it was something like, you won't find this song on Spotify.
It's interesting to hear, because I've heard many a musician
it's
complain
crazy
about Spotify, and basically unless you're Taylor Swift or Drake, seeing any substantial amount of money from streaming, it's most Canadian artists, can only
it's ridiculous. And even Snoop Dogg lately, I love what Snoop Dogg say. How come, a billion plays doesn't translate into $1 million? And it's a very good question.
Yeah,
and even Peter Frampton, Peter Frampton was up before some congressional committee or something talking about how many billion plays he got versus how much he actually made from that. And okay, I'm going to name drop now.
Yep.
My brother-in-law used to jam in his basement with Bryan Adams. So Bryan Adams is like, so he's still good friends with Bryan Adams. He went to Bryan Adams' private island for his birthday a couple years ago.
Wow.
What's really funny is so my brother-in-law, before I even met my wife, I saw his band here in Toronto. So before I even knew,
What was his band's name?
it was called Antlers.
Okay.
And they
Wow.
they
What
were
a coincidence.
they were yeah, I know, it's a weird coincidence. And they were playing at the Brunswick House, right? You remember the Brunswick House was that
I went to U of T, of course. Yeah.
Of course you do
Yeah,
remember
of
the
course.
Brunswick House. So what I loved
Probably a
about this
drugstore
band
now, right?
So we go to see this band up above the Brunswick House, and you know the Brunswick,
Brunny.
it's just a dump, and wasn't even that busy, right?
Right.
But this band, Antlers, they open with this song, and as I still remember, as "You're in the presence of greatness."
Okay, can I match that? I don't know if I can match it, but a buddy invited me for drinks, and he had 4 friends I had never met before, and this is very recently, a few weeks ago. I go on the Esplanade for drinks with these guys, and one of the guys, his name is Mike. We're chatting, and Mike and I are chatting about music, and then Mike tells me, just reveals his daughter's in a band, and I'm very interested in this. What band? And we're talking about the band, and the band is called Burrs, B-U-R-S. And then I find a song, I think it's called Lily, and I actually legit like it, and I'm all into this great band, Burrs, and I had never heard of them before. And then my buddy Cam Gordon invited me to a concert and to see the headliner, and on that very small bill was Burrs.
Wow.
Like this, and I just, the day before, I was having drinks with this woman, the woman Lauren, I believe is her name.
That's a cool coincidence.
Yeah, it's just, but I'd never heard of Burrs, and I got all into him that night because I was talking to Lauren's dad, Mike. Hello, if you guys are listening. And then now all of a sudden I'm invited to a show with Burrs on the bill. B-U-R-S, everybody. And check out the song Lily. It's on YouTube, and it's just the kind of music I dig. It's
So to button the Bryan Adams story.
Yes, of course. I'm coming back to Bryan.
Right. So I happen to know, but don't remember exactly, the figure that Bryan Adams told my brother-in-law that he got for Spotify, and this is Bryan Adams.
Doesn't get much bigger.
Doesn't get much bigger.
No.
And it was just a shit amount of money. Like
Can
it
you
was
give me
like
a
you
taste?
couldn't
Like-
believe how
Okay.
it might have been $5 or $10,000.
Whoa! That's the money Norm Macdonald owed you.
Right.
Okay. So Bryan Adams with huge hits. How many Summer of '69
right.
and Have You Ever Loved a Woman? And I mean this. Oh my God.
I just remember whatever the number was.
The Robin Hood song.
Whatever the number was, I was like,
You're underwhelmed. So what the hell?
Completely
Speaking of underwhelmed,
Yeah.
What the fuck? If I can swear on my own show, what the fuck is Sloan going to do? Sloan, a big Canadian rock band. I grew up loving. I catch them every time I can. What's Sloan going to do for money from streams if Bryan Adams is making $5,000?
Well, there you go. Right.
Now I'm pissed.
And even if it's $50,000, like so suppose I'm off by a factor of 10.
Right.
That's still not
paltry.
a lot of money.
Because it never did make sense to me.
And this is a guy who is legit rock star, owns an island, or lives
Huge
next door to Mick Jagger on the same island, or something
Right.
like that.
Massive
right?
rock star with
Right.
dozens of American hits. We're not even talking about
Right.
American hits,
Yes.
global hits.
Worldwide.
He can go to London, England, and sell out an arena. Okay,
Yes.
that's a big fucking deal. That's wild. Hey, I'm going to touch on something else, and I did get a note from Dan let me read Dan. He says, I suspect, so brace yourself here.
Okay.
Glenn.
Yeah.
I suspect Glenn won't wade too deeply into the Simon Rakoff stuff since he still does tours and probably doesn't want to risk the wrong toes being stepped on. So having read Dan's caveat, Dan's like your agent. He works for you. He's protecting you. I don't know.
Okay.
But I recently had Simon Rakoff on
I
the
listened
show.
to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I need to ask you, I want your comment on this because he basically went off on Just for Laughs and how Just for Laughs is not a friend of independent comics in this country. In fact, it's quite the opposite. And he was very succinct. I thought Simon did a great job. So people go find the most recent Simon Rakoff episode and what Simon said. But what say you, that Canadian guy, Glen Foster?
Okay.
Just for
Well,
Laughs?
full disclosure, I've done Just for Laughs 8 times. Okay. So it's a little different for me, but I haven't done Just for Laughs since 2014.
Oh, okay.
And they have a new guy now, and I met him. It's very nice. And I've been in contact with him and had sent him various videos and so on and so forth. And I thought, well, they got a new guy. maybe I'll get another shot at this because I'm doing, I think, the best material I've been doing in years, and it's unique, and it's a perspective that not a lot of people are touching. So I thought I had a decent shot this year, but it just finished last week, and I did not do it.
You were not there.
I was not there, and I don't think I'm ever going to be invited again, quite frankly, because their agenda is always new, and it's been new and ethnic, or new and LGBTQ, or new and right. So and Simon's right. They do not book a lot of Canadian acts. Of all the acts that are at the Just for Laughs, the only Canadians of note, guys like Russell Peters kind of thing, but they don't have to. You know what I mean? Like, that's not like booking unknown Canadian talent. That's like booking known, worked all over the world Canadian talent. So if they're using that as their Canadian barometer, that's not very good. But to the point of the radio station, like, I mean,
so JFL Radio.
Walk me through this.
There's a lot here, a lot to unpack here. So Just for Laughs Radio used to be known as Canada Laughs.
That's right.
On Sirius XM.
Right.
Canada Talks, I think, is the other station.
Yes.
They're the ones that had Humble and Fred for 5 years in the morning.
Right.
Okay, and I know this because I produce the Humble and Fred show, and you've been a guest on Humble and Fred.
That's right, too.
All right, so that's how we communicated, I think, originally. Okay, so Just for Laughs Radio is one of the ways that independent comics like yourself receive money, because it's very difficult to make money touring this country as a stand-up comic. But when they play cuts from Unchecked, for example, so that's your most recent album. If Just for Laughs Radio plays a cut from that, like I just did, although I'm not paying anybody for that, I don't know what that's a gray area. But when Just for Laughs Radio plays it, you are compensated somehow.
Yes,
financially.
But so I got very lucky in that Unchecked is my first American release. So it's getting played on U.S. satellite radio. So yes, I'm getting decent compensation for that.
But not thanks to Just for Laughs.
But it's not getting played, I don't think, or not very much on Just for Laughs. Now, it might be. I haven't looked at the chart specifically. But here's an interesting thing. Because I did all those early Just for Laughs, and they had started replacing local talent, whatever, Canadian, with their recordings.
Right.
I'm on some of those early recordings that they did. And I do get something for that.
But you get a far less money than you would have got if it was your cut.
It's a smaller piece, but I have noticed over the last I just happened to look at I had a reason to look at the charts, whatever. And in the last month, I was getting a fair bit of play on Just for Laughs Canada because of the old Just for Laughs stuff that I did. Now, I don't know how much money I'm getting for that specifically, but because I've done Just for Laughs the 8 times, that they have a lot of my material recorded, right?
Right.
So I am getting something for that. I don't know what's going on with Unchecked. I think there were some cuts that were being played. I mean, a lot of the cuts aren't even being played on the U.S. side, and I think there's cuts on this album that could only be played on like Raw Dog or something like that, because it's a relatively controversial. Some of the topics I'm hitting about, white privilege.
Well, I'm going to get to there next, my friend.
Okay.
You know what? I realize I'm going to...
And here's the flip side that no one really talks about, and I'll probably get shit for this. But Just for Laughs, Canada Laughs, there was a lot of stuff on there. Not a lot, but enough stuff that was just unlistenable. It was just horrible recording in front of you could tell it's a very small audience, horrible recording, and you knew the only reason it was because they wanted to get those royalty dollars, right?
But so people
were throwing together recordings, getting them on the air,
right?
Just to get
the royalty checks,
with no real thought to quality control, right? There should have been. I think,
I mean, this is just your opinion, so
yes, this is just my opinion. But
Big Lebowski here.
I had rented. When you rent a car, sometimes you get XM radio. I don't have it, but
I actually have a car that I don't own in my driveway right now, and it has Sirius
XM radio.
And I'll actually hear it for the first time all year.
When I'm in the car, when I have XM radio, I try to listen to a comedy station to see what's what. Right, who's being played, and I would listen to, and this is a few years back, but I was listening to the Canadian Canada Laughs, And there's a lot of good stuff on there, but there's a lot of terribly recorded, small crowds, hollow sounding rooms.
Right.
And some of it that I frankly just didn't find funny at all. And it's funny subjective, I'll give you that. But, you know, it has to reach it has to be a quality product. And if it might have been part of the reason that Just for Laughs was able to come in there, because if they were doing a job that was getting good listenership and so on and so forth, I don't think SiriusXM would go, well, we need to replace this, right? So there is a bit of a flip side to it, right? And I say I'm in an awkward spot because I am making a little bit of money off those Just for Laughs.
But you're not
reruns.
making Bryan Adams money.
I'm not making Bryan Adams money. No, certainly not, right?
It's tough sledding for you guys. Any regrets? I mean,
tons. My biggest regret is not moving to the States. Not really. I mean, I did go down for a brief period in 1984, but I really should have somewhere along the line.
I feel like that's when Humble Howard went down.
In 1984?
Around mid-'80s, because he's back in Montreal with Jeff Lumby doing a show, because
he's back in Montreal?
No, I was in my storyline. So like in the mid-'80s, he's in LA, and then he goes and does a show in Montreal with Jeff Lumby, and that's where he's poached for the Humble and Fred show, which starts in 1989. So I feel in that timeline, he's in like LA in like 86 or 87.
Maybe, but I wasn't. I mean, I was only there for 11 months. Right. So,
okay, yeah.
but I mean, and that's another issue, that it's so easy for American comics to come up here. It's so one-sided. Oh, what a shock. America doesn't play fair in their foreign negotiations, in their trade negotiations. What a shock. So it's so easy for Americans to work up here and so hard for us to work. Like, it would cost in the neighborhood of $5,000 to $10,000 to get just the permission to work there.
Right.
And that involves getting letters from producers.
And you risk
all
being
of this
denied,
stuff.
Right? Like you could spend that money and get denied.
You could get denied. Yeah. I mean, it's not likely. And I could do it. If I wanted to do it, I could do it. I just feel that I should have done it a long time ago, because I'm getting into a timeline now where I'm in my 60s and really I could die tomorrow. So, like.
Shout out to Ridley Funeral Home.
Yeah.
We hope you don't die tomorrow. Simon did mention that as well. There's unfair where American comics are coming up here easily, crossing the border, doing their thing.
I think it costs them $100 or $200.
Well, this is such bullshit.
All they have to do is say, "I want to work at this club." A club owner says, "Yeah, we'd like to have you work at this club." They fill out some
so let me
bullshit
get straight.
paperwork.
Let me see. So if the Just for Laughs festivals are fucking independent comics, and now they're playing stuff.
Well, another thing about now this does annoy me is that when they bring their big acts in and they do these big tours across Canada, it's always Brits, Americans, Australians. Very rarely, once a year maybe, they send out Rick Mercer with 4 comics, right? And nobody makes any money on that tour except Rick Mercer, because it's all like, eaten up in promotion and everything else. And
the game's
they're
rigged,
moving into smaller and smaller markets, sucking out every ticket dollar, and they get government money.
This is Simon's
the problem.
Point.
If you're getting government money, there should be strict rules attached to that as to how many Canadians you have to hire.
100%.
Right?
100%.
And that's my beef specifically, right? And I say I have a decent relationship, I like to think, with Just for Laughs, but who knows after this little interview.
Well, listen, I want to shout out now the hour of Simon Rakoff, just running down all the ways Canadian independent comics are getting squeezed in this country, and many of those ways he puts at the feet of Just for Laughs. But I want people to know that's episode 1293. So this is only 1301, so we're not going back very far.
Not too far.
No.
In fact,
we recorded that July 18th. Okay, so July 18th, Simon Rakoff. It's called Simon Rakoff versus Just for Laughs, Toronto Mike Podcast, episode 1293. And I was very interested in what you had to say about this. And then when Dan told me he thought you were still in bed with Just for Laughs. He thought you're not gonna bite the hand that feeds. That's never.
The hand doesn't feed.
The hand's not feeding.
The hand does not feed.
And it really bugs me. If this is government money, then there absolutely should be some caveat.
Absolutely, but you know the problem? It's Quebec. We don't look at government money we throw at Quebec. We just throw it at Quebec, right?
take you. I don't know. You're the man. You're here to tell me.
I'm telling you. I'm telling you.
You're telling me right now. I'm telling you.
Whenever Quebec is involved, it's like, well, just throw the money and don't ask questions.
Oh, boy. All right. Well, we talked about politically correct this and that, and you mentioned what seems to be happening in your opinion with Just for Laughs festivals. And it sounds like, if I read I'm going to read between the lines, that you as a 60-something-year-old straight cis white male, you feel like maybe that at this point is working against you with these festivals.
I think it's working against me in general. And you
got blue eyes too.
That's right.
So it's all bad news.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And not much you can do about that.
Not much.
Well, maybe there's a few things, but all right. So I'm going to play just a little bit as we kind of talk about this. But here, so I'm going to play a little clip of you, and then we're going to talk about this. But I first want to tell you that if you, Glenn Foster, have any old electronics at home, like old devices, old phones,
Tons.
old technology.
I have so much stuff. I'm a pack rat.
And if it doesn't work anymore, don't throw that in the garbage,
I
Glenn.
don't. I keep it.
Okay, you keep it. But if at some point you have to clean up or whatever.
At some point. In fact, I want to start getting rid of some of this stuff, but I've got some amazing stuff. I've got. What
do you got there?
I've got a Sony Walkman, an original sport Walkman.
I loved my sports Walkman. I loved it.
I've got a Palm Pilot.
Okay.
I've got
BlackBerry.
I've got a movie camera from the early 80s. And a projector system from the early 80s.
You've got like a museum going on.
I do.
There.
I call it that. I call it the Museum of Ancient Technology.
Okay, well, you can't throw that out. But if you did have something you did need to throw out, I'm going to just tell you the website to go to find out. It's recyclemyelectronics.ca. Thank you, EPRA, for accrediting these depots nearby where you can drop that shit off and it'll be recycled safely, properly. So recyclemyelectronics.ca. I also want to shout out the Moment Lab. If you are looking for help with your PR, your strategy, I can introduce you to Matt and Jared at the Moment Lab. They do great work. They're working with the great Stu Stone, who has just been rebooked for Toronto Mike. So Stu Stone, I'm going camping, and then we're going to have Stu Stone on the program. That's coming up. Thank you to the Moment Lab. And now I'm going to play that clip because I'm dying to know what you have to say about it. I found it very interesting. Here we go.
Well, let me tell our viewers why you're here. I'm excited to announce that you will be, I think we've announced it on our website, but I don't know if I mentioned it on the show, that you are coming to the Rebel Live this Saturday to do a politically incorrect comedy routine.
Which will be interesting, because if I'm doing politically incorrect comedy for people who are against political correctness, will it have the same punch?
You know what? I'm going to make a prediction is that people are going to be so refreshed by having someone tell jokes. I mean, let me tell you a pet peeve of mine. This hour has 22 minutes, and I casually know a couple of the people on that. Boy, they love making fun of Donald Trump, but he's not the president of Canada.
That's true.
And so they're very bold about mocking the powerful in another country. I've never seen them take a really good hard run at Justin Trudeau, and I think it's because they work for the state broadcaster.
Well, this is the thing, and I work for the state broadcaster on occasion as well, and I have noticed everything I've ever done for the CBC, when I listen back to it, for some reason, only the left speaker is working.
Can I ask you, can I throw something at you? And,
sure.
I'm not a scholar on this subject, but I'm interested in it. I want to learn more about it. My understanding is that historically, the role of the court jester, or the fool, was not just for entertainment, but he had a special immunity that he could say things to the king that no one else was allowed to do because it was just joking. And so he had an incredibly important role in that he could basically be the one saying the emperor has no clothes. Like if everyone was afraid to tell the king something, the fool could say it in a ta-da, goofy, ridiculous joke, and the king would say, oh, all right, and I'm not going to kill you because you have this special
maybe that apparently is the original role of the jester, and that it was speaking truth to power, and he was the only one who could get away with it because he was the jester, but not on Game of Thrones, if you recall.
Right, that's right.
Which would you rather you lose, your tongue or your hand?
All right, I'll bring down. It's enough Ezra Levant on this program, but Ezra Levant, that's the Rebel, I believe.
Yes.
Tell us, what are you doing there with Ezra?
I think
well,
we are.
I got involved with Sun News when they had Sun News.
Channel 15.
Yeah, because one of their guys, Brian Lilly, had come to see me in Ottawa. Not just Brian, it was, I can't remember who was the guy who was involved. Anyway.
But he's at the Toronto Sun now.
But they were, the Sun has, been there long before the TV station and afterwards as well. But so I was involved with Sun News because they had come to see me do a show in Ottawa, and they thought, oh yeah, this guy's, a little like not the typical lefty left. It's a pretty rare thing to even be centrist in Canadian comedy. I like to think I'm centrist, and I know people think I'm right wing. I don't think I am. I think a lot of my comedy comes off that way. But you make the slightest fun of anything on the left, and you're Attila the Hun and Hitler, right?
So, because Ezra made this comment.
So I ended up entertaining at they had like a live event, and I did a small
politically incorrect.
Yes.
Okay. And how does that, when you do that? Because I didn't actually see the bits you did for the Rebel there, but is your politically incorrect showcase different than your normal gig? Is it or is it pretty much like your default setting is that?
My default setting is that. I've been waging a war on political correctness since the early 90s, I would say. Right. And when I started noticing this whole, and it's been going on for a while, but I think one of the triggers way back then was the first time I saw an ad for the CBC looking for someone and specifically said, white males need not apply. It specifically said that. And if you said that for any other group, you'd be hauled away by the human rights commissions, which I don't think even existed at that point, but they certainly exist now. And that's another...
But if I may just mix it up a little bit here, is that once in a while you'll hear somebody will say, hey, we don't have a white pride parade, or we don't have a straight...
Yeah, I actually had a joke in the 90s about straight pride. I wouldn't do the joke now, but at the time, it just seemed like, you look back on stuff and you go, well, I wouldn't do that now because, and not because of the way the world is, but because the way I am, Right.
Because... and again, you and I are in the same boat in that, and again, I'm making a few assumptions
for example,
here.
I made that straight pride joke just because straight pride was a new thing. It's in the news, and gay pride was a new thing at the time, and so it's in the news. My best man was gay at my wedding, and he's my one of my best friends is gay. He was my best man. So this is what I mean when I say that I'm much more centrist. Right. I'm probably much more. What's the word here? Socially left-leaning, but fiscally right-leaning.
So if you're okay if a guy marrying a guy.
I don't care.
Yeah, you don't care.
No.
So you're conservative from a fiscal perspective as opposed to a social.
I'm not. Yeah, there are some gray areas, right? But overall, I'm pretty live and let live, kind of left wing, not as crazy as some of the lefties. I think it's just gone completely off the left edge, really,
So here, again, I said we're in similar boats here because you and I were both straight white guys with blue eyes.
Right.
We're both cis male. We're both
and that makes me nuts. That cis male thing makes me nuts.
Tell me.
I'm male. All right.
Right.
The vast majority of the world is in two categories, okay? So why do I have to put cis in front of my name, in front of my gender or whatever it is that I'm a cis?
You sure don't have to.
No, but you do. This is the thing. Okay, so if you're in the very small percentage of people that cis doesn't apply to,
if you're transgender,
whatever,
person.
Then it can be. Why do I have to make an adjustment to something?
But I don't think you do.
I do.
You get I
get referred to as that. Why should we refer to?
I think that's just to say that you are the status quo. That is why that CBC.
But it not need to be said.
Right.
It doesn't need to be said.
But let me be devil advocate this though, because I'm with you. But I would be grossly offended if somebody was having a straight pride parade or a white pride parade. That would offend me because I believe the whole reason the pendulum has swung wrong is because for hundreds and hundreds of years, straight white guys have ruled the universe and people kept hiring themselves. And the only way to affect any change is to sort of look at other people.
I think that's a simplistic way of looking at it because it's not all straight white guys. It's straight white guys of a certain economic, social,
So how do we change that, though? Like, how do you change that? I guess I'm curious. Okay,
I got a huge shit for this a few years ago too, but I actually suggested if two candidates for a job, say, right, are so close together that and one's black and one's white, what's wrong with having a lottery? What's wrong with flipping a coin? Even if you weight it, because you cannot tell an entire generation of any group of people that they have no future. And that's what is being told to straight white males now. Is like, Jordan Peterson said, he said, how could I in good conscience teach a course to straight white males knowing that they have no shot at getting into any of these postgraduate programs and so on and so forth because of their straight white maleness, right? So what is wrong? What is so horribly wrong with some kind of lottery system where you could weight it to account for past injustices, whatever, but it's not no chance of getting that job. It's a small chance, perhaps. It's some chance, right?
Okay. But I guess I disagree with your premise here because I don't agree it's no chance because white guys are still doing pretty damn well. Right?
No, they're not.
No?
First of all, the vast majority of university graduates now are women, right? Just look at comedy, right? We're again. I'm not saying that there haven't been problems with straight white people, whatever, in the past. That would be stupid to say that. But I am saying that it's a much smaller subsection. That is, it's a large group of people being punished for the actions of a relatively small group of people. I think. I wasn't even in this country. My parents came to this country in the 50s. So how am I responsible for anything prior to that? Right?
No, point taken here. I will just, again, point out that the most recent Juno for Best Comedy Album went to John Doerr. So, straight white guys are still being celebrated in comedy.
Okay.
Yeah, just only because John Doerr came on and recently and we talked about it. So it's not like all the awards are going to, I don't know, people, diverse people.
Awards are their own little can of worms.
You were a two-time, again, I went to my notes for this. You're a two-time Canadian Comedy Award nominee for Best Male Stand-Up.
Yeah, you can nominate yourself for that. So
is that right?
Yeah, oh yeah.
I'm learning a lot of scams with awards because recently there's been a couple of times where people are like, hey, Toronto Mike should win this podcast award and should be nominated. And then when I drill in, I find out that it's like they want like $50 for me to submit it. And I will say it's not a money thing. I don't want to pay 50 cents to be eligible for an award.
Right.
Like, give me the awards I don't have to pay money for because the show's good.
But there's also a lot of, you nominate me and I'll nominate you, and it's a small pool to begin with.
Right. So you nominated yourself for the Best Male Stand-Up. This is the 6th Canadian Comedy Awards and the 10th Canadian Comedy Awards. This is 2005, and 2009. Those are two awards that you nominated yourself for, and you did not win.
I don't know if I nominated myself for both. As I say, it might have been a switch off. You nominate me, I'll nominate you. But maybe I did, whatever. But again, I would only have done it if I had done something significant in that year, something that would be on television, like Just for Laughs episode or something,
All right, Glenn, I just now looking at my soundboard. I have a piece of audio and I have no idea what it is. So this will be a fun game where I play it.
Okay.
And then we'll find out together, okay?
All right.
I hope I got the right Glenn Foster here.
Jeez,
okay?
I hope so.
Here we go.
Does it end? Does it end? Does it end? It's a rap song, baby, goes on and on. It's got a lot of words and it's way too long. Just continuous talking all the way through. Only wrote it because I had nothing better to do. So if you want to dance, you might as well. If you just sit and listen, it's gonna be hell. Because the beat is boring and the words moronic. Twice as bad because it's stereophonic. Because another junk mixed in, you gotta wonder. Does it end? Does it end? Well, by now this record just a little ways in.
Whose voice am I hearing here?
Mine.
How long ago was this?
1986.
Because you sound like a different guy. This
1986.
is young Glen Foster.
So this is my response to Aerosmith
Walk This Way?
selling out their fans.
With Run DMC?
Yes.
Fucking love that song.
Yep. In later years, yes. But when I first heard it, and you must admit probably when you first heard it, when you first heard the rap.
I remember it well.
Because you'd be listening on the radio, and you'd be here. And you go, yes, Aerosmith, and then Backseat Love. And I'm like, what the fuck?
I love that you're here. I sometimes get accused of having too many leftists over here, and I'm glad you're here. Are you not a rap fan?
I am a fan of some hip hop now. There is some very good hip hop. There are some excellent rappers. But at the time, it just seemed like such a sellout of the whole, rock era type thing. And this song, although a response to the whole Aerosmith Run DMC thing, doesn't parody the Run DMC.
Right.
It more parodies the Sugar Hill Gang, if you remember.
Of course, one of the first big hits in the rap
so I was still kind of in advertising around 1985, 1986 when this came out. And so I knew some people. I knew some people who had studios and they were doing jingles. They were jingle guys.
Right.
So we put this together, and I still have 700 copies of it.
Do you?
Yeah, on 45. It's like a 3345. It's like one of those 45s with
with the big hole, and you got to stick the spider in there.
No, small hole.
For a 45?
45 with a 33 RPM hole in it.
Okay.
So this was because at the time as well, and I still feel this to some degree, that rappers aren't that talented for the most part. I mean, it's rhyming. I learned this in kindergarten, right? So I just didn't get it. I just did
it's just
not
your
get
cup
it.
Of tea.
To some degree, I still don't get it, right? But there are some very good rappers. I will admit that. There are some guys who are making excellent points, excellent social commentary, etc. But at a base level, if I can do it, it doesn't take that much talent.
Well, we heard you sing earlier, and it doesn't mean that you're Neil Young, right? Like it's
right.
it's like
it sure doesn't.
Okay, so that might be
it sure doesn't.
Might be the worst rap song I've ever heard.
Yes, it's meant. And an interesting thing is, I could not get it played anywhere because think about it. I thought, okay, you're making a parody of a rap song. Well, the rappers aren't going to play it because it makes fun of rap.
No,
but the rockers aren't going to play it because it is rap. Right? So instead of being a crossover hit...
And Dr. Demento's not going to play it because it's lacking that Weird Al charm.
You know what, though? I did send it to Dr. Demento, and I don't know if he ever did play it.
He might have played it.
I don't know if he ever did or not.
I loved listening to the Dr. Demento
I love
show.
Dr. Fish heads, dead puppies.
Yeah.
Dead puppies.
I'm trying to think of somebody. I stepped in a pile of shaving
cream. Yeah, exactly.
Don't whiz on the plexiglass toilet. Leave it nice for everyone. I don't know. These things tattooed in my head.
The one that's tattooed in my head is fish heads.
Fish heads for sure.
Fish heads.
Yummy fish heads.
Fish heads.
That might be the doctor, the staple of the Dr. Demento
show.
All right, Glenn. Remind us where you are tonight again. So SoCap.
The Social Capital Theater, which is above the Black Swan Tavern Pub, whatever, at Danforth and Broadview at 8 o'clock tonight. There are other acts on besides myself. Can't think of them off the top. I'm sorry.
No, because you'll be there.
Because I'll be there, but and it's the kickoff of the Danforth Comedy Festival. So that runs tonight, tomorrow night, and also next weekend as well.
Amazing.
At various places around here and there.
Before I play us out, I didn't ask you, it was going to be my first question, and now it's actually turning to my last question. But when in your career do you start using the moniker, that Canadian guy?
Okay, this is.
I think I've referred to you a dozen times as that Canadian guy, and we've never really
addressed it.
Yeah.
All right. So in the late 1998, 99, I was going over to England from time to time.
Okay.
And I remember one time doing this really crowded pub. And as I'm leaving the pub, I can hear people going, that Canadian guy, he was funny. I like that Canadian guy. And I thought, because I'm ADD and impulsive or whatever, I just thought, well, that's, interesting that no one remembers names,
right,
but they remember that Canadian guy. So I'm going to see when I get home, because the internet was just a burgeoning thing at the time, I'm going to see if I can get the website thatcanadianguy.com. And I did. And then shortly after that, I was recording my first Comedy Now special in 2000, which is still airing, by the way. Speaking of no residuals at all, it airs on Much Music. All the old Comedy Nows air on Much Music. They should be calling it Comedy Then.
So why can't, what's the deal? You sign off?
I signed off. No resids.
That sounds like bullshit. And again, I did mention this
I don't know if it
recently,
still happens, but it did then.
Like you can air, CTV can air Corner Gas 18 times a day, but the actors in Corner Gas don't see a penny.
There you go. And that's probably the deal that they signed, right? But you sign these deals because you think it's all about exposure, right?
Right.
And you think, okay, well, is it worth... It's a complex thing because when you do a special, you're like, okay, I know I'm getting next to nothing for this compared to what other people would get for a similar thing in the United States. You probably get 10 times the amount that that I got for. And most Comedy Nows were 30 minutes. I did 2 1-hour Comedy Nows, right?
Comedy Network specials, yeah.
So it was called a Comedy Now special because it was, let's face it, it's only 50, what is it, when they say this hour has 20, it's 44 minutes with commercials, whatever, but it's still 44 minutes of material, right?
Right.
And, so anyway, I had this managed to get the website thatcanadianguy.com, but because of the no residuals thing, and because I realized at that point that to that point I had done comics twice on CBC, I had done probably 3 or 4 Just for Laughs, so I already knew that these tiny residual checks were coming. So I made up my mind that I wasn't going to do another second of Canadian television that didn't benefit me every single time it aired. So I wanted to call it That Canadian Guy. I even worked in the joke about my website in the middle of it.
Right.
And because the internet was fairly new at the time, everything was kind of novel to people, I probably got 200 or 300 emails the next day from when it aired. There were people like, oh man, I've never heard of you. This is amazing. How come where can I see you? Blah, blah, blah. And this was all in the year 2000.
In the year 2000.
Right. And of course, I got seriously passed on the internet superhighway by many other people, made some mistakes along the way. But the point of it was...
You still have that domain.
I still have that domain. And the point of it was to make things easy for people, because if they don't see you a lot... You have to have some kind of... I kind of parodied what Yuk Yuks did, Yuk Yuks is not about you go to see Mike Macdonald, you go to see, Larry Horowitz. Yuk Yuks was you go to Yuk Yuks. It's branding. It's like it's like the
no-name seal of approval.
It's like Loblaws used to have the no-name brand, right?
Well, they still do.
Right, exactly. So it's branded. So I basically made myself a brand, is what I did.
Smart.
Yeah, and so many people, even occasionally still, will come up to me and say, hey, you're that Canadian guy. They don't know my name, but as long as they know that Canadian guy, we're all good.
Do you still do the debaters?
I have actually done quite a few debaters.
I've heard you many times on the debaters.
Yeah, I haven't done one in a while, but I would, if they asked me again, I'd certainly do it,
Well, with your outrageous opinions on rap music, don't hold your breath here.
Yeah.
Woo! I just checked in, so I check into the live stream periodically.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And firstly, my 9-year-old popped in to say hi, Daddy, and then wrote, help get Daddy to notice me. Like, this is what he tapped in the live chat. I'm like, Jarvis, I'm recording a podcast. I'm going to come up. I heard him upstairs. I'm going to come up and give him a kiss in a minute here. But And I see Leslie was here. Leslie's sister actually played at Just for Laughs recently, and I think she tapped out at some of the politically incorrect commentaries.
Oh, well, she should listen to the album.
But Glenn, glad you're here. Glad you're an FOTM, and we're going to find somebody to take your palma pasta lasagna. And thanks for... Congrats on 40 years, and thanks for coming by and making your Toronto Mike debut.
My pleasure.
And that brings us to the end of our 1,301st show. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Toronto Mike. What is your social media handle, Glenn? Where can people follow
Well, if you go to thatcanadianguy.com, it actually goes to a link tree, and it has all my social media on there. But Foster Funny is Instagram.
Go to thatcanadianguy.com. Our friends at Great Lakes Brewery are at Great Lakes Beer. They're hosting TMLX 13 on September 7th. So forget what you thought you knew. It is September 7th, I promise. Palma Pasta is at Palma Pasta. Getting Hip to the Hip is at Getting Hip Pod. Recycle My Electronics are at EPRA_Canada. The Moment Lab are at The Moment Lab. And Ridley Funeral Home are at Ridley FH. I actually have Brad Jones dropping by in a half an hour. We're going to record a fresh episode of Life's Undertaking. See you all Monday when my special guest is Ben Nicholson Smith. He's at Sportsnet. He covers the Blue Jays. See you all then.